Media shapes audience understanding of political events by using selection processes to construct points of view that influence perception and challenge dominant discourses. Michael Moore's Fahrenheit, 9/11, 2004, is a political documentary that critiques the Bush administration and the war on terror. Produced post-9/11's climate, it provides an alternative discourse to mainstream media's sanitized coverage of the attacks and subsequent wars. The documentary form highly is suitable for political commentary, allowing for editorial control, agenda setting, and counter-narratives. Using montage, juxtaposition, narration, and interviews, Moore challenges dominant discourses that framed Bush as a heroic leader and the Iraq War as necessary. Instead, Moore constructs an alt POV, Bush being represented as passive and incompetent, U.S. soldiers as destructive rather than heroic, and ordinary families such as Lila Lipscomb's as victims of unjust conflict. Through selection, omission, and emphasis, Moore constructs a persuasive POV that exposes the manipulation of audiences by media and government. In this, Farenheit 9/11 challenges dominant values of patriotism and trust in leadership, reshaping perceptions of post-9/11 politics. The reemergence of documentary in the early 2000s illustrates its stability for political commentary, as independent filmmakers used the form to construct counter-narratives that resisted mainstream discourses. Unlike traditional voice of God documentaries that claimed neutrality, these new works embraced subjectivity and editorial control, allowing directors to comment openly on political events. This shift coincided with the post-9/11 political climate, where the Bush administration launched the war on terror. While public initially supported this agenda, by 2004, rising casualties and absence of withdrawal strategy generated disillusionment, making audiences more receptive to alternative perspectives. Central to this dissatisfaction was the role of censorship and propaganda, such as embedded journalism, which restricted access to frontline realities and prohibited images of U.S. casualties. These restrictions constructed a dominant discourse, so the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq appeared both necessary and justified. In response, political documentaries such as Outfoxed 2004 and Supersize Me 2004 abandoned neutrality, using satire, montage, and personal expression to challenge accepted narratives. Moore's Farenheit 9/11 employed processes of selection, emphasis, and omission to critique Bush and expose media manipulation, foregrounding unseen footage, emotional testimonies, and satirical montage. Moore constructed a resistant POV that encouraged audiences to distrust official account and reframe their understanding of post-9/11 politics. Michael Moore's Farenheit 9/11 demonstrates the sustainability of documentary as a medium for political comment through its use of editing, montage, and selection processes to reconstruct 9/11 and reshape the audience's perspectives of George W. Bush. Instead of replaying the familiar news footage of attacks, Moore presents a black screen accompanied by diegetic sounds of the crash, screams, and the horrified reactions of New Yorkers. The selection and omission forces audiences to recall their own memories, intensifying their emotional response and making the event more confronting than mainstream coverage. Through this selection, Moore constructs a POV that contrasts sharply with dominant discourses, positioning Bush not as a decisive leader, but as passive and incompetent. This is reinforced in the scene of Bush reading My Pet Goat to school children as the attacks unfold, where Moore's use of slowed footage and an on-screen timecode emphasizing his lack of action. The editorial emphasis deliberately evokes frustration and anger from audiences, undermining the dominant discourse that celebrated Bush as a decisive figure after 9/11. By reconstructing the events through montage and selective editing, film challenges audiences to reject government propaganda and accept Moore's resistant reading. Bush's leadership was inadequate and complicit in sustaining fear for political gain. Moore's representation of Lila Lipscomb demonstrates how documentary can construct political comment through selective representation, with selection processes used to construct a POV that appeals to shared values and emotions. Unlike political elites, presented in formal settings and ready-made press conferences, Lipscomb is shown in informal interviews, which highlight her sincerity, patriotism, and family values. Moore privileges her voice through long takes and melodramatic close-ups with Steadicam for realism and authenticity, particularly as she reads her son's final letter from Iraq, allowing her grief to unfold without interruption. The omission of Moore's typical humor and sarcasm is deliberate, as he relies instead on melodrama to evoke empathy, selecting details such as Lipscomb's community service, support for her children's military service, and daily ritual for raising the U.S. flag. Moore aligns her with the average American. These editorial choices construct a POV in which Lipscomb becomes a symbol of ordinary families victimized by Bush's political agenda. As a result, audiences are positioned to feel outrage at the Gov's actions and to question the justification of war. Through Lipscomb, Moore uses melodrama and doc genre to reinforce patriotic and family values, while simultaneously reshaping perceptions of the Bush administration as responsible for unnecessary suffering.